Okay, here is something that is going to fundamentally change how you look at every glowing sign you ever see for the rest of your life. Neon, the thing we think of as the most American visual in history, is not American at all. It was invented by a Frenchman in a laboratory in Paris, using a gas discovered by two British scientists. And the first person to ever sell a neon sign in America was a man who literally carried two glass tubes across the Atlantic Ocean on an ocean liner and sold them to a Los Angeles car dealership for $24,000 in today's money. $24,000 for two glass tubes full of orange gas. And the car dealer bought them because a crowd of pedestrians literally stopped traffic on Olive Street just to stare at the things. That's where neon begins. Not in Vegas, not on Route 66, on a Los Angeles sidewalk in 1923. But here's the part nobody tells you. The man who invented neon did not think these lights were going to be used for signs at all. He thought they were a failure, a consolation prize. He was trying to build something completely different, and neon was the disappointing byproduct. The technology he almost threw away ended up becoming the visual language of an entire century. By the end of this video, you're going to understand why Las Vegas looks the way it does, why neon makes the colors it makes, and why a gas that exists in the Earth's atmosphere at just 0.0018% became the defining glow of the American night. Let's go. Before we get to the signs, we need to talk about the science. And I want to explain it clearly because once you understand it, you understand why neon signs look the way they do and why they're made the way they are. Let's go back to 1898, London. Two British chemists named William Ramsay and Morris Travers are systematically working through the noble gases. On June 12, 1898, they isolate a new element. They run an electrical discharge through it, just a current of electricity passing through trapped gas, and it glows. Brilliant, unmistakable, intensely vivid. They name it neon, from the Greek word neos, meaning new. And then, essentially, they move on. Because neon was scientifically interesting but practically useless. It was expensive to isolate. It existed in vanishingly small quantities in the atmosphere, about 18 parts per million of the air you're breathing right now. And the glow it produced had no obvious commercial application. Ramsay and Travers win Nobel Prizes. Neon goes into the scientific record as a curiosity. Enter Georges Claude. Claude was a French engineer, chemist, and inventor born in Paris in 1870. He was the kind of man who built things. He didn't just study phenomena, he figured out how to harness them industrially. His first major success was developing a safe method for storing and transporting liquid acetylene, enormously important to the industrial gas industry. By 1902, Claude had developed an industrial process for liquefying air, separating it into its component gases at scale. And one of the byproducts was neon, large quantities of it. For the first time, neon wasn't a rare laboratory curiosity. It was available in commercial volumes. And Claude started asking, what can you actually do with this gas? But there was a fundamental technical problem. The electrodes, the metal pieces at each end of the tube that conduct electricity into the gas, have a crisis. The electrical discharge gradually bombards the electrode metal, knocking tiny particles into the gas and contaminating it. The contaminated gas stops glowing cleanly. Early neon tubes had lifespans measured in hours, not years. Claude spent years developing and refining an electrode design that could withstand the bombardment. He tried dozens of configurations, different metals, different geometries, different gas pressures. Every attempt blocked by the same fundamental problem. But he kept going, because that's the thing about builders. They don't stop when it's hard. They stop when it's solved. Finally, in 1910, Claude cracks it. Using a combination of refined electrode design and a process called bombarding, heating the tube while running current through it to drive out impurities before sealing, Claude produces a neon tube that can glow reliably for thousands of hours. The technical problem that had blocked everything for 8 years is solved in a single process. On December 3, 1910, at the Paris Motor Show at the Grand Palais, Georges Claude unveils his neon lights to the public for the first time. 2 enormous tubes, each about 38 feet long, glowing with vivid red-orange light, mounted on the exterior of the Grand Palais. The crowd was astonished. But Claude was disappointed. His original plan had been to use neon tubes as indoor lighting, replacing incandescent bulbs in homes and offices. He had imagined neon lighting the homes of Paris. The problem was, neon glows orange-red, a vivid, deeply atmospheric color, spectacular in a dark window, but absolutely terrible for reading a book or eating dinner. Hold on, I want to stop here for a second. Think about the last neon sign you remember actually stopping to look at. Not just passing by, really noticing. Maybe a bar, a diner, a vintage motel, a storefront that made you take a picture. What was it? Where was it? Drop it in the comments, because in a few minutes, this video is going to explain exactly why that specific color made you stop. By 1912, Claude is ready to abandon the indoor lighting idea entirely. And then his business partner, a man named Jacques Fonsec, has a different idea. What if instead of using the tubes to light rooms, you use them to form letters? Fonsec goes to a Paris barber shop, the Palais Coiffure on the Boulevard Montmartre, and convinces the owner to install a neon sign in the window. It is the world's first neon sign. 1912, Paris, France. And it works exactly the way Fonsec hoped. People stop on the sidewalk. The sign is visible from an impossible distance for its size. It burns through Paris fog like it's generating its own light source. The barbershop owner is delighted. His competitors are immediately jealous. Claude's company starts getting orders. By 1919, Claude has secured contracts to install neon on the most famous commercial buildings in Paris. On the Champs-Élysées, already one of the most famous streets in the world, the first large-scale outdoor neon advertising appears on major French corporation facades. Europe is glowing. But America hasn't seen any of this yet. And then, in 1923, a man named Earl C. Anthony walks into a Paris showroom. Anthony is a successful Los Angeles automobile dealer. He owns the largest Packard dealership on the West Coast. He's in Paris on a buying trip when someone takes him to see Claude's neon display. And Anthony, a salesman to the core, a man who understands the science of getting people to look at things, immediately grasps what he is seeing. This is not a light, this is attention. Pure, purchasable, inexhaustible attention. He asks Claude, how much for 2 signs that say Packard? Claude's price, equivalent to roughly $12,000 each in today's money, is steep. Anthony doesn't hesitate. He buys them. He has the signs shipped to Los Angeles, has them installed in the windows of his Packard dealership on Olive Street, and on the day they are switched on for the first time, pedestrians stop dead in their tracks. Traffic slows, a crowd forms. A light that is not a flame, a color that has never existed in nature, something new. The Los Angeles Times runs a story about it, and within months, the neon sign business in America is born. The first American Claude neon licensee opens in Los Angeles in 1923. Within 2 years, neon sign companies are operating in New York, Chicago, Houston, and Boston. Once Americans see neon, they cannot get enough of it. Now here's the science of the colors. And this is the part that every neon enthusiast knows, but most people don't. Pure neon gas glows orange-red. That's it. That's the only color neon itself makes. But the neon sign industry figured out very quickly that they could create completely different colors in two ways. First, by using different gases. Argon gas glows lavender blue when energized. Mix argon with mercury vapor and you get bright blue-white. Krypton produces pale green-white. Xenon makes beautiful blue-gray. Each noble gas is a different color from the same basic physics. The periodic table is a color palette. You just need electricity to unlock it. Second, by coating the inside of the glass tubes with phosphorescent powders. A tube coated with green fluorescent powder glows green even though the gas inside is still orange. A pink phosphor coating makes the tube glow pink. This is how neon signs make the full visible spectrum. Not just through the gas itself, but through the interaction between the gas, UV radiation, and the tube coating. This is why neon sign is technically a misnomer for most colored signs. Only the orange-red ones are actually neon. The blues are argon. The greens are often coated argon. But neon sign entered the language so completely that it stuck for everything, regardless of what gas is actually inside. The word outlasted the accuracy. By 1930, there are over 2,000 neon sign shops across the United States. By 1940, the number has grown to roughly 5,000. Glass benders, the craftsmen who heat, shape, and seal glass tubes into letters and shapes, are in enormous demand. It takes years to master the craft. And in 1930s and 40s America, neon is everywhere. Glass bending is one of the most skilled trades in American manufacturing history. The craftsman heats a section of glass tube with a ribbon burner until it becomes pliable. A matter of seconds, the window is tiny. Then bends it by hand to the exact curve needed, blows gently into one end to prevent the tube from collapsing, and holds it until it cools. It takes years to learn. A single mistake ruins the entire tube. Every letter in every neon sign is a separate challenge. The letter S requires 4 precise bends. The letter B requires the glassblower to work both loops without the tube collapsing at the junction. A single cursive word like open, 4 letters, can take a skilled craftsman 30 minutes to bend correctly. And once the tube is sealed and filled with gas, there is no undoing a mistake. By the 1940s, American neon sign companies have mastered the full visible spectrum, over 150 distinct color combinations, using different gases, different phosphor coatings, and different colored glass tubes. The visual language of American commercial streets is now entirely defined by this technology. And one industry above all others has fallen deeply, completely, architecturally in love with neon. The casino industry, and specifically, one small railroad stop in the Nevada desert. In 1931, Nevada legalizes gambling. Las Vegas, at this point a small desert town of about 5,000 people along the Union Pacific Railroad, immediately starts building casinos. But to get people to drive 270 miles through desert heat, the casinos need to be spectacular from far away. The first major neon-signed casino on what would become Fremont Street was the Boulder Club, opened in 1929, then the Apache Hotel, then the El Cortez, each one competing with the previous. More tubes, more colors, higher signs. Las Vegas is inventing a new visual language, and neon is the only alphabet it knows. Then, in 1941, the El Rancho Vegas opens on what will eventually become the Las Vegas Strip, the first resort hotel casino outside of downtown. And it introduces something new, a neon windmill sign that turns slowly against the desert sky. Not a flat sign, a moving sign, neon that breathes. Then, in 1946, Bugsy Siegel opens the Flamingo Hotel, and the Flamingo changes everything. Where previous casinos had used neon as signage to identify the building, Siegel's designers use it as architecture. The neon is the building. The facade of the Flamingo is neon. the entire visual identity constructed from glass tubes and electrified gas. The Flamingo loses money catastrophically in its first weeks. Siegel is murdered by the mob on June 20, 1947. But the Flamingo's design philosophy survives him and becomes the template for everything that follows on the Las Vegas Strip. Neon, not as a sign, but as a building material. Neon as the medium through which a place announces its entire identity to the world. By 1960, Fremont Street in downtown Las Vegas is what urban historians and design critics will later call, and I'm not paraphrasing here, the single greatest concentration of commercial art in human history. Every square foot of every building facade blazing with custom neon in every color. Vegas Vic, the massive neon cowboy, waving his arm above the Pioneer Club. The Golden Nuggets sign so bright it could be read from a plane. And driving down that street at night in a 1960 Cadillac with the windows down, the desert heat still in the air, the sound of casinos spilling out onto the sidewalk, the glow of 1,000 neon tubes turning the street into permanent artificial noon, was unlike anything, anywhere, in the history of human cities. That was neon's peak. Today, many of those original Fremont Street signs, Vegas Vic, the original Stardust sign, the Aladdin, the Moulin Rouge, are preserved at the Neon Museum in Las Vegas, a boneyard of glowing history. Signs that were almost scrapped, saved by people who understood that what they were looking at was not just advertising, it was American art. In the 1970s, two things happened simultaneously that very nearly kill the American neon sign industry. First, the 1973 OPEC oil embargo sends energy prices through the roof. Neon signs consume electricity constantly. They can't be rapidly switched off and on without damaging the tubes. Every business operating a neon sign suddenly feels it in their electric bill. Second, plastic backlit signs arrive. Flat plastic panels with fluorescent tubes behind them. Dramatically cheaper to manufacture, easier to ship, easier to install, requiring no skilled craftsmen. They were also, compared to neon, completely soulless, but they were cheap, and cheap won. Through the 1970s and into the 1980s, neon sign shops start closing. The skilled glassbenders, who trained for years, start retiring without apprentices to replace them. The knowledge begins to leave the trade. At the industry's peak, 5,000 neon sign shops in America. By the late 1980s, fewer than 1,000. Las Vegas itself turns on neon. By the early 1990s, Fremont Street looks tired, outdated, forgotten. And in 1996, the city does something extraordinary. They build a 90-foot-high steel canopy covering 4 city blocks of Fremont Street and install a massive LED light show underneath it. The Fremont Street Experience. The old neon signs below go dark, replaced by a screen. The neon revival starts not in Las Vegas, but in the art world. In the 1980s, contemporary artists begin using neon as a fine art medium. Bruce Nauman, Joseph Kosuth, Keith Saunier, bending neon tubes into text and abstract forms for galleries. Neon is reframed, not commercial craft, but artistic practice with 100 years of history behind it. Then the Instagram era arrives, a generation curating their visual world around saturated color, authentic texture, and handmade things finds neon perfectly positioned. A backlit plastic corporate sign does not photograph. A neon sign in a dark room is one of the most photographed objects in the modern world. And here's the neuroscience. Researchers studying what's called the warm glow effect in consumer behavior have found that ambient colored lighting, particularly in the warm red-orange spectrum of actual neon, measurably increases perceived comfort and time willingness to spend. People linger longer under warm neon lighting. They feel more relaxed. They spend more. The specific narrow wavelengths of neon light activate a stronger emotional response than broad-spectrum white light. Your eyes process neon differently from any other light source. The warmth you feel from a neon sign is not metaphorical. It is physiological. Your visual system is literally responding differently to that light. Georges Claude, standing in the Grand Palais in December of 1910, watching his tubes and feeling disappointed that they were the wrong color for reading lamps. He had no idea he had just invented the most emotionally resonant light source in human history. And Earl Anthony, standing on Olive Street in Los Angeles in 1923, watching a crowd stop dead in their tracks to stare at two orange glass tubes. He knew exactly what he had. He had attention. Pure, impossible to ignore, physiologically irresistible attention. 100 years later, that is still exactly what a neon sign is. The next time you stop and look at a neon sign, really look at it, the way that crowd stopped on Olive Street in 1923, know that you are responding to the same thing they were. Not a sign, not an advertisement. A tube of noble gas, electrically excited, glowing with a color that does not exist in nature. And honestly, that's one of the most beautiful things in the world. Now, if you found the neon story visually spectacular, the next origin story might be the most commercially important one we've covered. The origin of the American shopping mall. A visionary Austrian architect who fled the Nazis with $30 and a portfolio. The one suburban parking lot that changed how America shops forever. And the bitter irony of a man who spent his final years furiously trying to destroy what he had created. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Share this with your neon sign person. Drop your favorite neon sign in the comments. I'll see you in the next one.